Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is Planning and Development. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of April 28.
Move approval.
Okay. Any discussion, comments, changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, first item for consideration is P1. We're going to handle this like we do in Administration Public Works, now that we have some items to consider in P&D. Alderman Grover, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of Ordinance 56014, which amends our zoning ordinance to establish the definition and land use regulations for aquaponics, which would be allowed as a special use in the B, C, I, and M districts.
Okay,
Is there a second?
Second.
thank you. Any discussion of this? I actually had a caller who has disappeared on me who inquired about aquaponics on Howard Street. And so if you're out there, your voicemail has been deleted. I wish you would call me back. So anyway, all right. Oh, yes. Mr. Munzer, you'd like to make a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Mark Munzer, Director of Community Development. I just wanted to note that while we don't have a specific proposal for aquaponics, staff does get quite a number of inquiries from the public as to where they could locate these operations, which, again, in a nutshell, are plants that are raised in water, that the water is recirculated to a fish tank, and then the fish create waste that is then circulated back to the plant. So it's a quote-unquote symbiotic relationship. But we want to be prepared for when we do get one, such as what you referenced, and Plan Commission staff recommend approval.
Okay. It's a great use. All right, thank you very much. All those in favor of recommending introduction to the council, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next, Alderman Tendam.
P2, Ordinance 57014, amending the zoning ordinance to establish the definition and land use regulations for microbreweries. The Plan Commission and city staff recommend amending the zoning ordinance to establish a definition and land use regulations for microbreweries. The proposed definition for a microbrewery is aligned with the Class P1 liquor license for craft breweries, limiting the production level to 30,000 barrels or per year. The amendment proposes allowing microbreweries as a by right permitted use in the M and 1 districts and a special use in the C and B districts. This is for introduction.
Second.
All right. We have Nikki Hiltwine on our agenda, on our sign-up sheet. I don't see her.
I think she might have,
Did she go home? She just signed up twice for...
I think she may have been planning to speak, but.
Okay, maybe she'll come back for the council meeting or whatever. All right, we had a lot of discussion about this at AMPW, having to do with special use, et cetera, and Ms. Hiltwine lives in the neighborhood of one of the new P1 prospects. I thought some of her recommendations were quite significant, and probably we need to discuss them. Alderman Nguyen, do you have any comments to make, seeing that this is being raised right now in your ward?
Well, I have a couple of questions that I came up with as I was reading through this, and also reading through, for those of for you who are not on AMPW, the issue of a nano brewery. And one of my questions, and I believe Ms. Hiltwine had this as well, is what is there, and I'm looking for this, how do we define, a microbrewery is something that doesn't exceed,
Page 196.
all right, let me go to that. But my understanding is a microbrewery is something that does not exceed 30,000 barrels a year, which is 930,000 gallons. But what is the exact definition of a nanobrewery? Because that I don't see that here, and maybe I'm missing it because
They can only do 3,000 or 2,000. I can't. It's real small what they can do a year.
Right, but isn't that definition, shouldn't that be in here as well? Because I think we don't have a definition for a nanobrewery.
Ms. Mason Cup, can you help us with this? I mean, on 196, it's itemized, nanobreweries for zoning and.
But it just says a very small
Also,
scale
yeah,
production
A
of
little
craft
bit,
beer.
I mean, what's a little bit?
What's a little bit? And one person's little bit
Yeah,
can be somebody
exactly.
else's brewery, you
Can you
know.
help us?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Michelle Mason Cup, Deputy City Attorney. The zoning code presently does not define a nanobrewery, and this is a definition of a microbrewery. When you have a nanobrewery, it's extremely small and isolated. If, for purposes of example, Sketchbook wanted to increase their production up to 30,000, then they could apply to be a microbrewery. It's a much larger establishment, but currently in the zoning ordinance, there is no definition for a nanobrewery.
But
Isn't there a state, though? Isn't there a state definition?
For nano.
there was,
Banana.
it was, I believe they were citing, I'm sorry, they were citing a New Hampshire statute
Oh,
for
okay.
that.
They
But
were.
could I
Okay.
just continue?
Yes,
Ann?
of course.
Because my concern is that, so just any nano brewery comes to us, ABC Nano Brewery comes to us and says that they're producing 5,000 gallons, which I guess we're going to consider a nano brewery. But then they move up to 21,000 or 21,000. When do they become a microbrewery? That's my question. What's the floor on the microbrewery? Because we have the top, we have the ceiling on it. A microbrewery does not exceed 30,000 barrels per year. What's the floor of a
I
microbrewery?
think Director Munzer.
Okay.
Well, that is the definition. There's not that floor there. I mean, anything less than 30,000 barrels, which again is self-reporting, we're going to consider as a nanobrewery. And again, to Deputy City Attorney's comments, we don't have that definition. It's one of the reasons why we're moving the microbrewery definition forward, because we don't have that from a land use perspective either. So I don't know if the response is to now investigate a nanobrewery definition in the zoning code.
I think that we should. Yeah, given the issues that have just been raised by Sketchbook, I think that we really should have a nanobrewery because you could actually start out as a nanobrewery, but when do you turn into a microbrewery? I mean, is there a definite
At
answer for
30,000
that?
barrels.
That's when you, 30,000.
No, that's the cap for a microbrewery.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Again, there's no floor there. So we would define anything above that as a light manufacturing use, which is an issue for these types of operations that want to increase their capacity, because then they're not allowed in most districts outside of manufacturing districts.
My suggestion for all of this, and it has nothing to do with licensing, which we're getting into a little. My suggestion is that if you are a brewery, you need to be a special use, and I don't really care in what district it is. And the reason I'm saying that is I go back to when we were dealing with, believe it or not, tattoo parlors.
I remember that, Ann.
Tattoo parlors are, and so I believe are pawn shops, a retail use. A retail use. So a retail use in our zoning code is just a gigantic collection of anything that's sold over the counter almost. And so I think that this ought to be removed from retail use, a routine, traditional retail use, and made a special use for, and have a category called breweries.
I completely agree with that.
So, and I am committed to not making any change in the current applicant because I believe they're already into the process. And I have no idea what the law is, but just common sense tells me that we shouldn't change that. So what do others think about making breweries a special use?
I thought that was part
okay.
of it.
This is,
I know, but in APNW, didn't we ask the, I'm sorry, didn't we ask Director Farrar to, as a part, I'm trying to remember the amendments that was made. I thought that was part of it.
well, we asked for information, but
Oh,
then
okay.
not thinking that we were
Okay,
going to
well,
have
now,
this right now.
Yeah, okay, so then I'm definitely for it.
Are there any other comments? I mean, this is just for introduction tonight. We're going to have to send our staff back to see if they can pull this off. Do you want to speak to this?
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear as to direction. This would make any brewery, including an Nano brewery, a special use in the districts that are identified in this memo, or merit further investigation if it also needs to be in the same districts, and that we're creating a definition for nano breweries?
Well, yes, and the reason nano breweries need to be in here is because we don't know what one is.
Yeah.
And so as long as it's a mystery, we, you know.
Understood.
I have two other speakers, Alderman Grover and then Alderman Tindem.
Just as an aside, looking at the New Hampshire licensing, it's for those who manufacture beer or specialty beer not exceeding 2,000 barrels. And it makes me wonder, too, what do we do with our home brewers who are well under 2,000 barrels, but they're
becomes-
manufacturing, but it's more of a
Yeah.
hobby rather
But
than
it's a home occupation.
than a
That-
business,
We have
right.
another ordinance.
And
Maybe
that
not
that would
even
be for
occupation, they're not
home
selling.
consumption.
Right, they're just not selling. All right,
Alderman
so
Tindem?
That's Nano Brewery in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Well, I had just Googled the federal IRS definitions, and I think at the other end, the low amounts, we need to be considered too of the home breweries, because there are limits of the IRS of 200 gallons per year, over which a home brewer is supposed to self-report and pay taxes. But so I think we have to find that range that's suitable for a
Right. Well, as the
business.
applicant said tonight, even the 3,000 gallons or the 30,000 are self-reported, so, I mean. All right, so I think our staff has direction.
I understand.
Okay, all right. So there's been a motion and seconded for this to be introduced. Could we add with recommended amendments? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
P3, ordinance 62-0-14, granting special use for commercial indoor recreation, Precision Multisports at 2114 Jackson Avenue. The Zoning Board of Appeals and the city staff recommends the adoption of ordinance 62-0-14, granting a special use permit for commercial indoor recreation, Precision Multisport at 2114 Jackson Avenue. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'd like to have suspension of the,
Okay. We have before you a white sheet of paper with an amendment. Would somebody like to read it's B, hours of operation, so it would be on page.
okay. The hours of operation, the applicant shall operate the special use authorized by this ordinance only between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 10 p.m. on Monday through Friday, and only between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 8 p.m. on any Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, thank you very much. This is on page 211. It's item B of the ordinance. I don't know if you need a minute to think about this. Alderman Wilson.
I assume the applicants are comfortable with the change.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I spoke with the applicant just before this meeting, and they agreed to these changes. They wanted to see these changes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, those were aren't these the same hours we agreed upon at the zoning board meeting? I was here, so I thought that was when we decided to change those.
I wasn't here, but they asked for these changes.
Yes, I know.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm confirming. with
Right.
you. They did. All right, so the hours of operation have been amended. Could I have a second? Second. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of introducing and suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, we have items for discussion. Director, do we have any items for discussion? Oh, yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to introduce a new staff person in the Community Development Department, and she will stand up and say hi real quick. Her name is Lori Pearson. Lori is joining us as our Planning and Zoning Administrator. So as many of you know, kind of a refashioned Dennis Marino position. And she has responsibility for all of our planning and zoning activities. She joins us from the city of Champaign, where she was the land development manager and dealt a lot with a large university in that community, so she'll bring some experience to Evanston with that. And prior to that, a lot of work experience in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. So I don't know, Laura, if you could just say hello real quick, that'd be great.
Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and thank you for having me. I'll keep it brief, though.
All right. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. We are adjourned.